Okay, so everyone should be able to hear us, turn off the music, and we should be ready to go. So thank you so much for stopping by, Frippy.
Of course, thank you for having me. It's much appreciated.
Not a problem. So you have been playing the game for only 6 months.
Yep.
You want to tell us how you decided to start playing Eve?
It comes down to the fact that I had two people IRL who were very avid Eve players, one of which for 9 years, one for 3 years. And they basically were frequent customers at a job I used to work at, and so I would hear them talking about Eve all the time, and it got me interested. And they were part of sort of the Karma Fleet University, which is a like a grassroots corporation to teach new players, so that you can then go and apply for the nullsec version of Karma Fleet. And so that's basically how I got introduced to the game and how I learned about the game and everything to do with it was because of two people I met in person who just introduced the game.
Oh, hold on. Someone just clued me into that I can hide non-video participants. Just like Eve, I'm always learning something new about Discord. So, how have you been finding your time in Eve?
Oh, I love it. I think I spent 2 months up in high sec and I found that pretty boring. But the last sort of 3.5, 4 months I've been in null sec and that's been a lot of fun. The frequent PvP, which is sort of the main element I'm into, is great fun. I'm okay at it. I'm not the best, but it's fun nonetheless. I do a lot of Ishtar ratting because got to make it somehow, and that's pretty much my two activities within the game, as well as going on fleets and whatnot. But I'm loving it so far.
Okay, so then what are your 3 campaign points for CSM19?
Okay, so I've got four main sort of pillars I'd have, but I'd say I can sort of squish them into three.
We can let you
So
have
I'd
4 if
say,
you want.
uh, so the first of which ties into the fourth. So I'm just going to put them together. So one of my main talking points would be putting forth the idea of a ESS and Skyhook rework in order to keep nullsec PvP actually engaging. And because of a lot of the people I've spoken to within my corporation alliance, find the current systems very frustrating and not very beneficial to keeping nullsec quote unquote rejuvenated as the Equinox update was meant to do. So that's one of my main talking points, I'd say, is basically put forth the idea of a rework for both the ESS and Skyhooks. The Skyhook one is a lot more easier to explain, which would just be reverted back to how it originally was. Get rid of this whole period of waiting for it to be available to be robbed. I just think that if I, for example, take out a pirate fleet and we go filament to somewhere, we've got to go from system to system to try and find a Skyhook to rob. That's in its period of being able to be robbed. Whereas beforehand, you could just go up to any Skyhook and start a robbery. Because we want to avoid ESSs because again, ESSs aren't fun. The idea I'd have for an ESS rework would purely be just focusing the outside of the dead space, which would be at the moment when you walk to an ESS, it takes you to 0, and then a lot of the time when we're chasing people around nullsec, they'll go to an ESS and just start burning off in a ship that's far quicker than everybody else's. And it just basically creates a very, very frustrating, boring fight when they're burning off 500 kilometers away from you and there's nothing you can do about it. So what I would put forth as an idea would be make the outside of the ESS like any other structure, so you can warp to it at 0, 10, 30, 100, whatever you want to, which wouldn't break the game. All it would allow you to is just to warp into the designated distance that you'd like to and help sort of catch the people who like ESS burning, essentially.
Okay.
That's basically the 2 points I've squished into one. Um, my main one, which comes from my perspective as a new player, would be to improve the new player experience as somebody who is just joining the game as a fresh player. Because, in my opinion, I think because I can remember the tutorial very vividly, I think the tutorial in itself is good for teaching you how to fly a ship, but it doesn't teach you the essentials such as how to work the market properly, how to fit a ship effectively, making use of CPU, power grid, capacitor, all of that. Doesn't teach you any of that. And my solution to that would be we already have agents and mission agents within the game, within the agency tab, be that in high sec or low sec or null sec. And all you do is just have a mission agent who would have a specific role of teaching you how to do the market or how to fit ships or XYZ. The implementation wouldn't be that difficult. It's just I found as a new player, there's so much information to get your head round within Eve. Like genuinely, it's like overwhelming. And I've tried to introduce IRL friends to the game, and they've all quit because of how overwhelming it is, and not had the support that I had. That thankfully I had people. I had Calm Fleet University to teach me the ropes of the game, and I caught on quite quickly on how everything kind of worked. But I've had friends literally quit the game because it was too complicated and there wasn't enough onboarding for the new players. So I'd want to aim, if I was elected as a CSM candidate, to improve the new player experience and the onboarding methods in which are used.
Okay.
And then finally, the last point I have is essentially the idea of making PvE activities more enticing across highly low and nullsec by maybe putting forth the idea of a team-based PvE activity. And I know there's already things like home fronts, and it could take a style like faction warfare in the sense that a group of people go and do this PvE activity, but it would have enticing rewards at the end, not just ISK bounties. It'd actually have enticing rewards, a bit like Abyssals, how at the end you have the chance to get cool loot. So just sort of quality of life changes is sort of the angle I'm going for, but especially for newer players as well as current players, because if the new players experience is better, there'll be more people playing the game because more people will want to play the game because the intro to it will be a lot more easier, and therefore the player base will increase, and there'll be more people to play with, and uh and especially with the nullsec changes I mentioned, a lot more people who live in these nullsec blocks might be happier with these changes, especially the people I've spoken to. So that's sort of the platform I'm kind of going for.
Okay, that's some pretty interesting ideas. I'm. Have you looked into Eve Rookies yourself, or what we've done, or what I've done in the game?
No, I haven't.
So I have been playing the game for about 5 years now,
Okay.
and Eve Rookies was formed about a month and 3 days into the playing, and basically we are a community, a public community that does events, fleets, and helps out new players. So that's kind of how we came into being, and this is how the questions that you're about ready to be asked has come in. So definitely some very interesting ideas. So that being said, what is the biggest challenge facing new players? We know the MPE itself is a challenge, but what else?
Define. Did you say NP or MP?
I said
Like,
the NPE, the new player experience. We
oh,
know that that is already a challenge, but what else is a challenge to new players?
I would say, as from my perspective, one of the biggest sort of challenges for a new player coming onto Eve is what to do. Once you finish your initial 4 intro missions, it kind of just puts you into this massive sandbox and lets you free and without a lot of guidance. And I think that's the hardest part because not a lot of people like their hand held during games, but I feel like there could be some more hand holding within this game for the new player.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like if you're a veteran player and you create an alt character, you can skip the tutorial as you currently can. It's no problem. But for new players, they have to turn to people like you for the
Yep.
answers for all their many burning questions of how do I use the market? How do I do this? What do I even do to make money? Where to
Mm-hmm.
go to? Where's the best place to buy ships and modules? Like the I would say the biggest issue to new players is the lack of information given by the game to new players about the game.
Okay.
That's the biggest issue.
And what would you think would help retain players besides giving them information in the game? Because what if they don't actually click? Because CCP actually has put in videos on some of the career agents, and I believe on the Air career program,
Yes,
there's
yes.
videos and whatnot. So if players don't even click it,
If
so
the information doesn't go into their head, you're
yeah,
saying if it
pretty much, yeah.
how would you retain a player? You would make the game enticing to play at a entry level. So by that I mean have activities within high sec, like I mentioned, with maybe co-op activities or solo activities
Mm-hmm.
that maybe stem away from the generic combat anomalies that are genuinely there for maybe a new player that can sort of learn the ropes of how to PvE fight, how to actually have something that will keep them within the game so that they learn but also have fun whilst doing it. And that's how you keep people within games. The learning curve is massive, and to get over that, you want to make it a little fun whilst you're doing the learning. So I think that would be how you would keep players within the game. How you'd implement that? That would be changing the current sort of starting system, not starting the starting tutorial in a way that sort of uh pushes players more for self uh exploration to work things out, but also have a helping hand there if they need it, kind of thing. Because some people just want to learn the game by themselves. Some people want to have their hand held, and if they can't get the information, then there should be an activity within the game that basically is a hands-on, you're doing something way of getting that
Yep.
information into your head by physically doing it, rather than watching a video or reading a paragraph or from a mission agent, for example.
Okay. So since you've only been playing the game for 6 months, this probably may not be a fair question. But when is the last time that you ran through the new player experience, the actual tutorial?
A month and a bit ago, when I
Okay.
created a second account.
So you actually ran through the whole thing and you didn't skip the tutorial?
No, I ran through it all.
Did anything change from your
No,
first time?
no,
Okay.
exactly identical.
Perfect. So now we are going to jump into another frame of thought about community. Eve Rookies is all about community, and we believe that player engagement is what's going to keep them in the game. And
Hmm.
over the years, CCP has done many research studies. They've brought in experts. We have something called the friendship machine, and that always shows that if a player can go in and engage with another player within the first couple hours of the game, their chances of staying in is a lot higher.
I would
So,
agree with that.
so what is your definition of community within Eve?
My definition of community within Eve would be my current situation I'm in right now. I am in a corporation which has vibrant communication channels every single day, no matter what time of the day I come on. I will have people ask me how I am, how my day's been. There is actually a sense of community within the corporation I'm in, that I have relationships with people and friendships with people that are almost akin to family. You know, like these guys and girls actually care about how you are as a person, and that makes this game. It makes me want to play the game because I know that if I come on Eve, I have people to talk to that are gonna look out for me and look after me, and as a new player, that's really nice to have because you ask a question and it gets answered. You're not treated like some idiot who should know it. You're treated with respect. And if only there were more corporations out there that would, be positioned within high sec so that new players can actually join a friendly community. Because there's a lot of cases of corporations in high sec exploiting new players. So I definitely agree with what you said about if a new player speaks to somebody within the first few hours of them playing the game, they're more likely to stay. I completely agree with that because having a voice telling you sort of the basics is very, very useful.
So, these next couple questions I'm going to change up a little bit just because you are so new within the game. Have you, as a new player, encountered any toxicity
Oh
anywhere in the
yeah.
game yet?
Oh yeah. I think that's more from a perspective of the fact I'm part of Goon Swarm and it's all goons. So no
Now,
matter where I go, be
now,
that.
now, let me just state because the whole Gurgruten things. Toxicity, what I'm looking at is the racism and the sexism and ableism, those casual memes that people put out, things that we shouldn't be talking about in 2024. Ganking, PvP, propaganda, the drama and the warfare between, like, say, goons and Pandemic Horde and whatnot. That type of thing is perfectly okay. It's the other stuff bringing the real world,
Oh,
problems. Yeah.
I've had PanFam members homophobically insult me,
Okay.
and because they've seen my Discord and I'm bisexual, so it's in my Discord bio. They've seen that I've had
Okay.
open homophobia towards me. I've had people say shit about my mum. So yes, I have
Oh.
experienced toxicity, but I would say it is specifically from the people that it's only ever been from basically PanFam.
I am so sorry that you've encountered that. I really am.
It just is what it is. I mean, I come from a first-person shooter background. I come from a background where everything is an insult. So, hardened shell towards it, couldn't care less, turn the other cheek kind of thing. But I have encountered toxicity. I encountered it a couple weeks in, just straight off the bat. But I'm still here. I don't care. It shouldn't be within the game, but unfortunately, with any video game, with any online platform, there is always going to be toxicity. There's always going to be racism, homophobia, sexism, transphobia, whatever. There's always going to be that, and that's just something that unfortunately we have to deal with as people who are online.
So, I know within Goons, there was some major drama a couple years ago, and they instituted something called beekeepers. And so,
Correct.
when you encounter this type of toxicity, are you able to go to anybody within your organization and get help, get support, have
One
someone?
hundred percent, 100%. And there was a situation where I did actually go, and within 10 minutes of me asking for help, I received help from a very high level individual, and the problem solved. So yeah, there is definitely a support network in place, and it is very effective. And uh, because at the end of the day, regardless of what corporation or alliance you're in, there are certain things you should just not say to people. As a human to a human, you shouldn't be saying that.
Totally
And
agree.
I would say that 98% of the interactions I have within Eve have been nice, fair, whatever. There may be a bit of swearing. I don't really care about swearing. It's whatever. I'm British. Swearing's part of our language. But it's the 2% of times when there's the racism or the homophobia. That's the bit where it pushes it too far.
Yeah,
You know.
I totally agree. So, when you encounter it, like say you see it in local chat, and it's gone beyond salt, and it's gone into clear, toss violating insults, and like I say, all those things that shouldn't even be said. What do you personally do?
Because I've seen it quite a lot, I just ignore it now. I genuinely just don't care. I mean, I care in the sense that it shouldn't be happening, but I don't. When it's directed towards me, I couldn't care less. When it's directed towards somebody else, however, I do care, and I get annoyed and angry. But if it's towards me, I couldn't care less. I think that those people are just ignorant and stupid and just shouldn't. I mean, I think that you know, people can say what they want to say, but there should be some level of sort of chat monitoring in the way that certain terms should maybe get people flagged up, you
Yeah,
know? Because I haven't read Eve's full terms of service, but I'm pretty sure somewhere there might be a no homophobia, no racism section.
there is. There is. It's there.
So, you know, I would say I rest my case, but
Yep.
he can't because there's nothing you can do to stop it.
Yeah, so those of you who are listening and take part in that, do better. Seriously. Now,
Honestly, if you're just gonna take your hatred out on other people, just go do something else.
yeah, exactly. Now, let's go to a more fun and less depressing topic. This one is really becoming my favorite. It's let's pretend. So we are going to pretend that you made it to the CSM19. You
Ooh.
you get into your first meeting, and CCP reveals all. You get to see what is going to be the next expansion and the expansion after that, the things that maybe will come in the next 2 years, and then it is revealed to you there is nothing you campaigned for or are knowledgeable about that's going to be done. What do you do?
So I read that question and I was thinking about it, and genuinely, um, if that were hypothetically the case, and I'm sitting there and I'm hearing it all, I genuinely would probably just ask about it, just ask what's going on, and I am fully aware that I am all the things that are on my campaign, right? I'm fully aware that there is a 99% chance that none of it will get put in the game or implemented. And it's just having a certain level of realism. So if I was in that situation, I would just ask for more information on what they're talking about and sort of get caught up.
Okay, very good. And another thing is when you play Eve long enough, and I want to think that this happened to me about my first year in Eve, your gameplay will be changed, or something that you dearly love and you use all the time is going to be taken straight out of the game. If you find out that an integral part of your gameplay or the community that you represent is going to be axed, what do you think you're going to do?
Because you got to be non-biased, and you can't really. That's a good question. That I think if it was personally like something, let's say a ship I flew or a style of gameplay I had that was going to get axed, I would just adapt. But if it was for example, like if they decided to get rid of like alliances and stuff like that or whatever for some stupid reason, hypothetically speaking, let's say they got rid of all alliances and whatever, I would
CCP
have a
has done
bit more.
Stranger Things.
Yeah. So let's say they axed every big block and it's now just corporation based shenanigans, right? I would be completely shocked by that. And I think that my reaction to that would be very negative towards that. But at the end of the day, the feedback I'd have to give would have to be structured in a way that it doesn't come across as angry or negative, but it is negative.
Okay. And then if a community whose gameplay is totally outside of your expertise approaches you, say, because you haven't probably played long enough to get into faction warfare, say the faction warfare community comes to you, or an MPSI community comes to you, completely opposite to goons. What do you plan on doing if they need your help?
If they need my help specifically, I would ask those who I know have expertise in that area for advice and then relay that on. But if I have the ability to pass them on to other CSM members that have more experience in those areas, I would do that immediately, because at the end of the day, the community's worries and thoughts should take sort of precedence over my ego and me being the one that solves it. So if there's somebody who's better than me at that expertise, I'd pass them on to them.
Okay, so the reason I threw this question in is if you read Reddit, which I know a lot of us do, you would think that the average player on Reddit thinks that CSM, we need to know everything, that we need to be an expert in the entire game. My favorite response to people is, I am an expert in what I'm an expert in. For everything else, I'm knowledgeable. And for the things that I truly am not that in depth knowledgeable for, I'm sitting on with 11 other people. Somebody
Yeah.
is going to know, and
Yeah.
somebody is going to be able to help you.
Yeah.
So,
And I had a post up on Reddit just basically advertising my CSM forum post, basically just saying, hey, introducing myself, here's my CSM forum post link, go check it out. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And that got about 4,000 views, and I'd say majority of the comments were supremely negative toward me as a person, and very few were actually giving me questions. Most of it was just slating me as a person and slating CSM. So it reminded me of why I don't go into Reddit.
so I'm not laughing at you, I promise.
It's okay.
But but I'm laughing because you were me 2 years ago. I actually ran for my first CSM campaign, CSM19, and I'd only been playing 2 years in the game. And when I did my CCP interview and did some stuff on Reddit, that was the number one thing. No one focused on what I knew, what I've already accomplished in the game. It was all, I only had 2 years of experience. What could I bring to the CSM? So don't get too disgruntled and don't get too disheartened.
Oh yeah,
It's a trial of fire.
Yeah, yeah. I know that Reddit is just a cesspit of salt and toxicity, so I just put the post up knowing that I would get a lot of backfire. There's going to be a lot of backfire from that, and there was. But at the end of the day, I was prepared for it, so
Yep.
it didn't really faze me.
Excellent. And the last question is, and just talking about Reddit again, players sometimes expect the CSM members to fix something or go in to the meeting room, beating our chest, yelling and screaming and demanding CCP change something. Have you given any thought to how you're going to balance the limitations that is placed on you as CSM? And that is, the NDA, that's the big elephant in the room, but also the fact that you're not a developer, you're not a CCP employee, you're there just to give advice on what you're knowledgeable about. Balancing
Yeah.
that with making sure players feel heard.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, the CSM is a glorified focus group for CCP. It is a group of people who are there to receive and relay feedback to and from the community, not to actually implement changes. And unfortunately, CSM doesn't necessarily have the power to implement change. However, what it does have the power to do is actually make sure that the voice of the community is heard. And so, in terms of the NDA and the balancing between got to make sure that the constituency feels like they've been heard compared to what I'm allowed to say. It's very tricky waters in which you have to go through, and I think that as long as what you're doing doesn't break the NDA, number one, doesn't break the NDA, and two, has it makes it the community feel like they have had a positive effect on that CSM member, then it's okay. Like if someone comes to me and says, "I want this changed," I'd speak to them about it and perhaps relay it or relay the information, but at the end of the day, it's not going to get fixed the next day. It might get fixed in 2 years. You never know. But it's definitely it's definitely tricky waters to wade through. That's for sure. Considering there's legal binding there.
It's tricky. I can tell you 100% it is tricky. Now, one of my community's questions that they wanted me to ask every single candidate is, what is your stance on multi-boxing? Now, I realize maybe, you've been in the game long enough that you've acquired, a couple accounts. You said you just created a second one. Especially living out in Nullsec, where botters are rampant. What is your stance on multi-boxing?
Okay, so I think personally there's a difference between multi-boxing and botting. I think that if you're actively, let's say you have two accounts up and you're multi-boxing two accounts and you're actively playing with those two accounts, that's fine. If you're playing on three accounts and you're actively playing on those three accounts, that's fine. Doesn't matter how many. I know somebody in my corporation who actively plays on 8 accounts. Like literally, they'll go out and solo mine an entire asteroid belt with 8 accounts. You know, that's fine because they're doing it. They're actually actively playing. What I'm not a fan of, because it's against TOS in a lot of games, is botting, where you set up multiple accounts and then you have a computer system just run it for you and just have it set up in a way in which you're botting. And I'm against botting because it is a form of cheating. I mean, at least in my opinion. Uh, but multi-boxing in itself isn't a linear thing. It is comprised of many components. Are you multi-boxing in PvP? Are you multi-boxing whilst mining? Are you multi-box ratting? What are you doing? Like, it really depends on the situation. And I know there is a lot of botting going on in nullsec. I'm not blind to that. I see that. And I am against people who bot, because at the end of the day, you're just lazy and you should just be doing it yourself. Because I know people that multi-box 6, 7, 8 accounts whilst mining and are able to actively play on all of them. So why cheat? Like, get good.
So I'm going to throw this in as a bonus question. I don't know if you have enough experience in the game, but how do you feel about drone assist? Do you think getting rid of it would be like the end all save all of stopping botting, or tampering it down a little bit?
As in, when you say drone assist, as in you're sending your drones to assist a ship.
Yeah. So
I guess that's
yeah,
that function.
yeah. Drone bunny.
Now, I've got some personal grievances against that personally, because some of the fleet compositions I run rely on a certain person having drone assist to help them. Specifically, when we're doing ESS robbing, we have basically the one guy in the middle with all of our drones assisting him, and then everybody else is kiting or whatever. So I think removing the feature would be detrimental to certain aspects of the game that aren't botting.
But now let's go back to
However,
that question that I asked.
however, however, if it had the opportunity to either get rid of or damage the system in which they use, I would be for it.
Okay.
even with my personal opinions, I genuinely think that if it would have a positive impact on the game
Yep.
and would be detrimental to people who are botting, then I'd be for it.
Okay, so second to last question. The torture's almost over. What do you think is the most pressing issue in EVE today? Out of everything that we've talked about, or maybe things that we haven't talked about, what do you think the most focus needs to be on?
Okay. So there's a couple different things I've thought about for that question. I I'd say the one thing that affects everybody across high, low, and null sec is the cost of things on the market and scarcity, and the fact that the way they're changing industry and sort of towards capital super capital ends of industry, it was very negatively changed from what I've been told. I haven't touched any industry or PI, so my knowledge of that area is very little. From what I have heard, the changes that were made to those areas of the game weren't beneficial to the player
Nope.
base and introduced scarcity. And now we have a place where if you want to buy a Marshall, it'll cost you 12 billion. So I think that the most pressing issue is the economy and finding ways in which we can sort of ease off this very, very, very high priced market and maybe adjust industry or adjust other aspects of the game so that the higher prices either stay where they are, but relative to how much money you make aren't as high, or the prices come down because the industry gets improved.
Okay. And then the very last question before we open it up for questions. So, Twitch chat, start typing in your questions.
What's your Twitch? Let me open it up so I can actually read the questions as well.
Did I not give you the.
You didn't give me the Twitch.
I'm sorry. Let's rectify that. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, so out of the 50-some candidates that are running this year for CSM19, what other candidates would you like to see elected alongside you?
Okay. In terms of the sort of forum posts I've read, hold on, let's get me back on the voice call. In terms of the forum posts I've read, there's been a lot of interesting points put out there. Be that by wormholers, be that by our fellow Norsec players, be that by highsec players. I mean, in terms of the people I actually know who are running, I would like to see Zintage on there, because I know that he has very good leadership skills, and I know that from him being a very good FC. So I think his leadership skills would be a very big positive effect to the CSM. You know, it would be nice to have a good leadership figure. In terms of ideas, I'm just sort of going down just to remind myself of names. I mean, Frozen Fallout. I think, as I know Frozen Fallout quite well, and he's not an Allstate player at all. He's not even in Goons. I just know him quite well, thankfully, from this CSM run, and we come to know each other quite well. I think Frozen Fallout would be a very good candidate because he is a low sec only player,
Yep.
which means he would have not, and also he's a very, very avid faction warfare player. So he would bring a perspective to CSM that is about low sec faction warfare, which at the end of the day, not a lot of us nullsec guys do. So I think having someone like Frozen Fallout would be a good candidate.
Okay, excellent. So, doesn't look like anybody has any questions for you. Lucky you. Do you have anything that you'd like to say in closing?
I just want to say thank you very much for having me, and good luck to the rest of the candidates.
Where can people hit you up and talk to you if they would like to discuss more about your ideas from this interview or your CCP interview, or if you go and talk to Frozen Fallout?
Um, The main places I check for people asking me questions is my CSM forum post, which are you happy for me to link in your Twitch chat?
Yep, go ahead.
I'll link my CSM forum post in Twitch chat so you can actually read what I'm actually putting forth and the responses to the replies, the responses to the comments I've had. Or you can just add me on Discord at _Frippyy. So my Discord, I'll put it in chat as well. Is, oh my god, let me do an underscore. Oh, I'm pressing control, that's why. Is that cool? Either of those two places I just put in chat if you want to talk to me in any way, shape, or form. Go ahead. My DMs are open on Discord. My CSM forum post, if you put a comment, I will reply because I actively check it. So
Perfect.
and I just want to say thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So these will be put down in the description when I get this uploaded to YouTube. And I will put this video in your forum thread as well, so people can watch it and ask questions. And then for you guys on Twitch, I'm going to be shutting down for a couple hours. And then at 20:30 Eve, we will be back with Young Puke 2. And I actually said his name right. Or said it perfectly this time. And he is also a faction warfare... He's also a faction warfare candidate and rather interesting individual and has probably a lot to say. So I will see you guys back at 20:30. And no, Cacti, I'm going to go eat dinner now. So if I don't feed Oli, he's going to come up here and it's not going to be great. So thank you guys so much, and I will talk to you soon.